everybody. Good morning. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you here today for this breakfast meeting. I have a couple of thank yous. One very big one to ON5 for sponsoring this event. The title is really fascinating, and I just want you to think about the title. I think it's a brilliant title, absolutely brilliant. And I think it's worth just thinking about those three words and then thinking about them again afterwards, because I think we're going to have a very, very interesting discussion. Because I'm delighted that Myriam Maestroni is here with us. I'm not going to, Myriam, do a whole thing on your CV, because it would take too long. But it's really, really impressive. And I suppose some words that jumped out at me were thought leader. I think thought leader is really important. CEO, entrepreneur, author, professor. I kind of went, wow. And so I'm just going to conclude with wow, okay? What's going to happen is that I will be interviewing Myriam in a few minutes. We'll spend about 20 minutes on that. Then I'm going to throw it over to the floor for questions when it's up to you guys. We'll do that, and then there'll be some more networking. But before we get on to the actual interview part, what I'd like to simply do is, for a short time, welcome Jean-Philippe Verdier. Jean-Philippe is the chair of the Climate Change Forum of the French Chamber. We're very involved in this subject and have been for years. And he's founding partner of Verdier Company. And I'd like Jean-Philippe just to say a few words, in a way as a double introduction. Once Jean-Philippe has stopped, we'll start our little interview. Okay, Jean-Philippe, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody. Great pleasure to see you. And particularly a great pleasure to be associated with this morning's breakfast with ON5, which is one of their very active members of our think tank. So as Peter was saying, I'm Jean-Philippe Verdier, the co-chair of the Climate Change and Sustainability Forum at the Franco-British Chamber of Commerce. And this forum has been existing since 2011. And our think tank is aimed at, I think I prepared a slide somewhere. Was it? Okay, I guess. Anyway, so our think tank is aimed at sustainability officers, managing directors, CEOs, head of employee engagement with respect to sustainability topics. And the whole point is really to provide very pragmatic opportunities to learn about technology, about market trends, and to obviously unearth business opportunities, and to create a great opportunity for quality networking. So disclaimer, sorry, I'm an investment banker, I need to have a disclaimer. So as you can see, we've been pretty busy. We've had about 60 sessions since the inception, well over 2,000 man-hours of meetings and exchanges. We meet 6 times a year, 2 hours each time. Plus we have usually a site visit. We went to visit a nuclear plant of EDF Energy, a waste recycling plant of Veolia, the PwC highly energy efficient building next to Tower Hill. We also have some very nice networking opportunities. Guest speakers come from a wide range of areas and expertise. And the main topics, as I was saying, could be around policy, could be around technology, financing, agriculture, architecture, and so on. And the point being, obviously, to provide leaders and members of the forum the opportunity to really think laterally how those topics can affect their business and where they can find opportunities. We've also done, about 5 years ago, a little leaflet with a few members of the forum that is very much aimed at SME businesses on how they should think about the risk coming from climate change and sustainability for their business, the opportunities for them, and all the cost aspects. Next sessions tomorrow morning with on hydrogen train, which is being organized by General Electric Alstom. As you may have seen, they've launched that exciting technology in Germany a few months ago, and they're going to bring it to the UK. And something also very, very nice, we have a very exclusive cocktail event for patron members and members of the Climate Change Forum at Home House with Raymond Blanc, which is a 5-star Michelin chef on the 12th of December. So, as I was saying, I'm an investment banker. I do day-to-day profession. So, the next two slides is very much just to show you the sort of way we look at climate change and sustainability in the investment sphere. Nowadays, it's very much a mainstream topic, even in the financial world, would you believe it? And you start to see it coming in different aspects. In terms of systemic risk, how do you look at it from an insurance point of view? In terms of business disruption, in terms of reporting, financial reporting, and obviously in terms of valuation. Needless to say, 4 out of the 8 financially most destructive weather events in the US over the last 100 years occurred only in the last 14 years. I'm not going to talk about the California wildfires and those elements, but that does exist. Insurance businesses do need to take that into account. How are they going to look at your businesses? How are your premiums going to evolve? Mike Carney, talking about the impact and the risks on the level of the balance sheets of investment banks and big banks. This one, the UK endorsed the TCFD recommendation for financial reporting on climate risks. All the listed companies in the UK will have to report in one way or another their exposure to climate risk, but also what are going to be the actions. Bear with me, that is going to come for all the private companies. So just be ready, it's coming. And that's very important. Now, in terms of opportunities, business requirements, just a couple of highlights there. I think we have seen via the Blue Planet episode of Sir Attenborough how actually there can be systemic shifts in consumer behavior and in perception. That's again plastic. Tesla nowadays is worth more than GM and Ford. This company didn't exist 10 years ago. Google and IKEA are actually amongst the biggest renewable energy producers. Who would have thought so? Costa Coffee had overnight to react to change, obviously, its little plastic straws and how it was going to deal with its coffee cups. And this is just a systemic shift that happens overnight and that can actually really impact any one of your businesses. So you just need to be aware of those things. You need to be prepared. You need to have internally the processes, the people who will just bring you the information you need to have to be able to deal with that. Looking at value, money, and big finance, as you may have seen via the first implementation of the COP21 summit of 2 or 3 years ago in Paris is coming into effect in terms of the banks retrenching from financing any sort of activity that may be too exposed to high carbon intensive businesses. That is coal, that can be gas, that can be plenty of other businesses. UK pension funds are really starting to look at it. This is only the very beginning. This is quite actually a disappointing point when you look at it, because only 5% of them have climate change policy, which means that your investments may well be exposed to climate change policies that are not being managed. But hold on, this is going to move very quickly from 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 30%. You start to see more and more of those funds that can actually be even much further than just pure climate change non-exposed businesses to be much more proactively invested in businesses that do take that into account. Last one but not least, the green bond market. Just didn't exist really 4 or 5 years ago. Last year, $150 billion of issuance in green bonds. This year, pretty much the same trend. This is nothing. This is a big number, but in the context of financial fixed income market, this is really a drop in the ocean. But it is coming. And when you talk to CFOs on those sorts of structure, they totally understand what that means in terms of pure PR, what that means in terms of being able to tap to a very different source of investors, but also increasingly in terms of positive yield for them versus standard issuances. That's pretty much all that I wanted to say. You are very welcome to consider the Climate Change Forum if you are members of the Chamber of Commerce. It's very exciting, It's a very constructive set to exchange ideas. So thank you very much indeed, and
Thank you.
the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I was listening to Jean-Philippe, I whispered to Myriam, I said, the whole world is a client base. I mean, it's an extraordinary client base because we're all in this together. What I'd like to do is to start off with an English expression. We have an expression in English which is poacher turned gamekeeper. And when I was reading up about you, it did occur to me that you were indeed the poacher who became the gamekeeper, because your whole background is in fossil fuels. In fact, everything about your background is fossil fuels. You were a guru of fossil fuels. And I suppose what I'd like to ask you as a kickoff question, Myriam, is, was there a moment of epiphany? You told me when we spoke that you are at the redemption stage of your life. But I'm interested, and I think everybody here would be interested in why. Why did the fossil fuel lady become the guru of non-fossil fuels?
Okay.
And when?
Yeah, okay. Thanks. So, good morning, everybody, because I didn't have the opportunity to say hello to all of you, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm very honored. So now I know that I have a challenge, because with the presentation Peter did, it's not easy for me, especially when my English is not as perfect as I would like it to be. So back to your question, it's true that I feel like a redemption phase, and anytime I speak, I'm talking about that, because I spent 20 years in this fossil fuel industry. And back to the beginning of 2003, I was managing Primagaz in France, here called Calorgaz, and suddenly we had a very basic problem. Everything was going perfectly well, except that we were losing more customers than when we were gaining. What for me was a very important issue, a very important concern. So I thought, well, nothing important with that, in the 35 hours week stuff in France and things like that. I put everybody back on work, but it was not that at all. And what happened is that we were talking energy, and we were talking about all the details of the supply chain, exploring production and all the stuff we need to do as energy companies to get the energy at the end user place. And our customer were looking at something very basic. I'm sure that everybody is doing that here, looking at how much they will allocate to their energy budget. And that makes a big difference, because when you're talking about the price of oil barrel and things like that, actually you're not paying attention to how much is going to cost me every single month. And looking at that, I went through a marketing exercise, actually, where we realized that the use you are doing with your energy change a lot. And if you are living in two very similar houses, one is very well insulated and a very nice efficient boiler, and the other one is just the opposite, the difference in the energy bill is going to be up to 30%. So at that stage, I changed completely the value proposition and the business model, and I said, we are not going to be energy supplier any longer. What we are going to do is to provide and design and provide sustainable energy solution for all. And instead of just looking at regulatory aspect and safety stuff and supply chain issue, we are just going to pay attention to the end user and look at the why and how is using energy. So that was the trigger, and actually it went very well, because the customer portfolio, of course, start evolving in a different way. By the way, it's the same in every businesses, and it's always less expensive to keep customer loyal than to gain new ones. That's something you can verify. If you don't do that, please do that, because you will see that it's very easy to check. And of course, beside that, it has to see with my own reflection about the role we have in this life. For me, when I started with the energy business, I was, helping the world, because it was the time when those people producing energy were not the one using it. So it was very exciting to be in front of a reactor and working on oil business, in dollar commodity business, hedging. There are plenty of things to do with the energy business. And suddenly I realized that if I was working in this fossil fuel, it was in 2003, eventually I was not helping so much the world, and I started to realize that there was an issue with the climate and the CO2 emission. And I am coming from the mountain in the south of France, and for me environment and plants and biodiversity is something important. And last thing, I was lucky because I worked for 10 years on a book called, which is an Harvard Business School model called The Service Profit Chain of Professor Esket and Sasser. And I start realizing that beyond the simple equation price-product, of course we need all to find the best relationship between the price and the product, there is intangible we need to pay attention to, and this intangible are going to create value. So I work so much on this model that normally works for services, it doesn't work for energy, but I started thinking on how to transpose this model in this energy business, which at the end of the day was a very basic model. I was buying energy at the price A, selling it at the price B, and of course eventually if possible be superior to A. So that was all that, and the outcome was that in 2004, I'm saying that right, I said to my people, I was sales and marketing director at that time, we are going to help our customer to save energy. So everybody was freaking out, because of course an energy company for more than 150 years, the business model was the one I just described. So they thought I was, what is she talking about? And look, it was 15 years ago. I was the only woman in this company. The top 100 were 99 men, basically. And when you start saying that, it's kind of an experience.
What would you, just share with us, give us one reaction that you got.
Well,
I mean, an extreme reaction.
Something, today we are going to talk about that. We talk a lot about innovation, but when you are just taking the problem upside down, people will say, well, but what is wrong with you? So at that time, I was spending a lot of time explaining, it's very important to pay attention to customer. And I was using all kind of arguments, starting by the fact that it's less expensive to keep customer loyal. And actually, it's very difficult to understand, because I went to my first agency and I said to the guy, well, why people are leaving us? And they said, well, because it's too expensive. Actually, it works in most of the business. Okay. And what energy do they choose? Because, of course, everybody assumes today that we cannot imagine the Maslow shelter thing without having a shelter with hot water, heating system, and things like that, right? So they said, well, they choose electricity. So I said, I'm not very lucky, because these are, the problem in energy is that every single energy has a price in the different units. So there is a way to put that in the same unit. So I did the exercise, and whether you believe me or not, the price was twice more expensive with electricity than with LPG at that time, with gas. So I thought, these are idiots. I'm not lucky. The first agency. Then I go to the second one. Then I went to the second one, and I said, well, what are you doing during all the day? So, well, we are doing all the stuff we need to do. Very difficult process to stop the contract, because people terminate their contract. So after the idiot, the depressive one said, you talk with customer, with happy ones sometimes? So no. Why are they going to terminate the contract? I say, well, after idiot, depressive, I'm really not lucky at all. But when you go through 40 different places, everywhere it's the same story. At the end, I took an engineer, actually, I put him in the marketing, and you know what the guy told me? He said, but madam, I'm good in what I do. So, well, but basically I nominate you because I feel you are good, it's not, marketing is a good thing and what happened is, with all that, in English you said, reality is perception, or perception is reality, doesn't matter, and I realized that because people were living that, we were not matching any longer the expectation of our customer. And when I was starting to explain that, I had all kind of reaction, because it's very difficult to know everything about energy, because I took a scale, and just the regulation is 4.5 kilograms, so it's a lot to have that in your mind. And the journey starts when you say everything you learned in the past became necessary but not sufficient condition. So it's something which is a nerve-breaker for people, because they believe they are expert and they know all the things they need to know, but it's just the beginning. And basically, I think it's the case because I teach in HEC, you said that, I saw now over years that it's the same in most of the businesses. You have to realize that it's kind of very frustrating to assume that what we did in the past, we need to continue to do that in order to keep value, because of course if you are not doing that, the basics, you are destroying value, but it's not because you are going to do what we did in the past that we are going to create value, right? So that's extremely violent to people. And I was lucky because I realized that the change process I went through, which was a very challenging one actually, because it was about engineers, so we have to become a customer-centric company, so I have plenty of anecdotes I can tell about that. And in this process, at the end, it's very difficult to get to the end. And actually today people say, well, if you were still in this company, could you change? I'm not sure.
What was interesting about your background is that you moved from major corporation to startup. That in itself is the subject of the whole book. But I'd just like to ask you, if you have to summarize the one biggest challenge from a move from major corporate life to startup, would you like to tell us what the one that immediately comes to mind, that really was a challenge?
Well, actually, there are three major challenges.
Okay.
The first one, you move from a CEO.
I'll give you three.
Okay. So you move from CEO to an entrepreneur. So it means that you are comfortable with wages, that you are a big corporate. So we have convention every year. You meet your colleagues. The day after, you get into a room and say, "That's my office. That's fine." And the second after, say, "Well, I have to pay the rental fees now, and I have to pay the salaries now." So we're 10 people at that time. So it's a kind of freaking out experience. And basically, I did that without money. The second thing is that I moved from industry and energy, from industry to services, which is different patterns, And finally, I moved from energy to the other side of the mirror, which is energy efficiency. And as you say, it's not at all the same kind of experiences. So the challenge of that is that most of the time, it's a reset. So the challenge is to do our own mental, emotional reset. And if you are kind of stressed in your life, please don't do a startup, right? Don't leave this room, say, "Well, I'm going to do my startup." It's the most freaking out experience ever. And honestly, I prefer to tell about that today after 7 years than 7 years ago. But of course, we are living in a period. I love this sentence of Einstein saying, "We cannot solve the problem with the same mindset or the same thinking we used when we created them." That's true for us, And our major challenge at the end of the day is how to reinvent ourselves with all the stuff we know, we learned in our life, but please get this idea that if we want to change and play the new music and keep the CDs, sorry, it's the old image, you take the former CD and you put another one, it doesn't work. So we have to keep the best of what we learned and to start getting to the fifth level of leadership as described by Jim Collins, from good to great, which is humility, because you start learning again and we spend our life learning. And,
can I move from your journey to something a bit more macro? And it seems to me, listening to you and when we spoke, that you are part, we talk about disruptive technology, but it sounds to me that you're part of a disruptive economy. And I'd just like to know whether you feel that disruption is the right word. It seems to me that you did disrupt. You disrupted your life, your way of thinking. And then when we were talking, you came up with some interesting ideas, which I didn't know much about, but I'm learning. You talked about usefulness. You talked about eco-prosumers. You talked about win-win-win. And you talked about the word caring economy. And I just was wondering if you could share with us whether you do believe that we are in a new era, and that era is the equivalent of a disruptive technology, and that it's here to stay.
well, Peter, you started with the title of the conference, People, Planet, Profit, and this is the right order. In the old economy, it was just about profit, full stop. How many of you have this experience? Raise your hand. So it means that at a certain point, and is that a good illustration of what I was saying, doing good business or doing what we always did is part of what we need to do, and we are not creating value by doing that. So the new journey starts when we are on the top of this previous experience, building, creating value beyond cost, beyond the previous experience. So this is about people and planet. So what does it mean? It means that basically, people, young people talk a lot about the meaning of they look for meaning, they look for sense of what they do, for purpose, whatever we want to call that. Actually, it starts with, how would my company look if I was not there? And how the world will look if my company didn't exist? And because of that, you start thinking about beyond the material purpose of your business. For example, I was talking with one of you he said, well, I'm cleaning clothes, so this is the deal. But today, do you consider that it is enough? No, because of course we need to make sure that it's done in paying attention to the environment, not using polyethylene and not be bad for our health. This is what new economy is based on. It's called technically externality. So we need to take into account how to create value and to reduce negative externality. CO2 is a negative externality. So, if I put that in other words, to maybe talk more directly to our Earth as individual, I would say that it's about thinking on from a win-win-win-win experience. It should be a win for me. So basically, I explained to you that I was not feeling so well. It was not win for me because when I go to the customer, to my friend, explain I'm in a fossil fuel business, I better avoid to tell about that. So we have to feel comfortable with what we do. If we have a kind of disalignment between our idea and between what we do, we better change our idea or change what we do. So getting this alignment is win for us, because if not, it's not sustainable. Then it should be a win for our company. It should be a win for the society, and today it should be a win for the planet and for the universe. And if we don't have good elements answer to how it could be win for all these different levels, my friends, this is not sustainable business. And this is not new economy. And it's this intellectual, emotional, maybe spiritual challenge that we have to face by building growth that, of course, at a certain point will secure profit, obviously, but not any longer at the expense of people and not any longer at the expense of the planet. This is exactly the core of what Jean-Philippe explained, of sustainability, of sustainable development, which is at the very center of economy, environment, and people.
Myriam, do you feel that message, that people have got that message? Or are you still thinking, listen, 99% of the world don't get it?
No, now it's less than 99, but unfortunately because I knew a world where it was 99%, that was part of the challenge to explain that. Today, things went much faster than what I imagined, rising awareness of it, and I can come back of that. And actually, our big issue when talking about environment is that in the business world, we have been very unfortunate because some people use the ecology and the environment as a political argument. So, for many years, we have the bloody, sorry for that, leftist, really, left-wing people talking about ecology and not growing, degrowth, and not very exciting vision of the world. And on the other hand, we had business people who were not giving a damn at all of the environment. So of course we are in this political equation. Now it's over. It's over. So when I meet political people say I'm an ecologist, I say, what else? Today, it's not about right or left wing to be paying attention to our planet. Look, what happened in the world, and it was just 2 years after I started my revolution, it's this famous movie of Al Gore, this truth, inconvenient truth, thank you. So this movie was a tipping point, actually, and since then, everybody in the world, planetary level, realized that we had an issue with the climate change. And everybody started understanding that. And of course, on the top of this movie, what happened? Jean-Philippe explained that regulation is moving at two levels. The environmental regulation, meaning Kyoto roadmap with the 320, all know about 320? How many of you don't know what 320 is? Raise your hands. Okay. So it's the Kyoto translation of the objective of reducing by 20% the CO2 emission, reducing by 20% our energy consumption, and having 20% of renewable in the energy mix. And now, of course, after the COP21 in Paris, the Paris Agreement roadmap, which will start moving after 2020. So this is the environmental regulatory plus the regulation of company. Jean-Philippe explained that, and in France is the case since 2001. We, at a certain point, have the obligation as company to produce a sustainability report. So you have to pay attention on that, because normally only the big company, listed company, have the obligation to do that. So when you are not a listed company, say, yes, it's not me. But the problem is that when you do that, you are not thinking about sustainability, what it is, what are we doing, when big company, big corporate are thinking about that. So basically they create a culture, they create a knowledge that in a small size company we are not creating. And this is competition distortion, because we don't have playing with the same. And the last thing is that, it may be related with digitalization, is that end user in general, we became more empowered. because we can know everything when we want about anything thanks to internet. So end user, consumer, users are becoming prosumer, are becoming smart. We are becoming smart. So because of all these elements, the patterns we used to work on in the old economy are not the same any longer. And this is where new economy is rooted.
Before I open it up for questionings to the floor, I'd like to ask you two other questions. They interest me. I'm not an expert, but I'd like to hear from you how critical you personally believe things are in terms of the environment. Where are we? What is your prognosis? And what, in your opinion, are the timelines if we don't act quickly?
Well,
I'm just interested as a non-expert.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're not talking about my opinion because I'm not an expert.
Okay.
So my opinion is basically built on more than 1,500 experts everywhere in the world called GIEC. And those guys have been studying for the 20 or 30 past years now at very top level, getting every day more element. And a couple of weeks ago, they published a new report, and the fifth one, which was the big one 2 years ago, where they explain, and I have plenty of friends who are specialists of that, they explain that if we continue with the same level of emission, we have just 15 years, 15 in front of us before getting to critical point where what we see at a small scale today, which actually fires in California, floodings, all the kind of things you don't spend 1 week now, with maybe sometimes 1 day without talking about, are going to get accelerated. So it's not my opinion, it's fact-based. And I am quite concerned by that because now we can say that the universe has 14.5 billion years. Our planet Earth has 4.5, it's aged 4.5 billion years. We take 10 billion years in the universe to create our Earth. Human life is 200,000 years in the Earth. And it took us 300 years to make a mess of that. We didn't know. We always did our best. I love this new song, we're just human after all. I'm not going to sing, but... and now we have less, I thought 30 years, actually it's less, to find how to reconcile the condition of human life in our Earth with good business. And there is nothing more exciting than that, so we are lucky. We're all leaders here, because if not, we're not getting at 8 o'clock in the morning to go and listen to me, right? So it's because any of us is going to do his own effort in his business that we can still change the trajectory in which we are now.
Okay. Final question then before I open it up. It's one of these, a real quickie. What's the one message, if people remember nothing else of this morning, and we know that the retention and attention average audiences is going down by the minute. All the research shows that. What's the one thing when people leave this room you want them to remember?
Well, you are in the country of Shakespeare, so I would say we are done of. We are, made of what our dreams are built on.
The stuff that dreams are made of.
Yes, well, I will tell you with an American philosopher everybody know, called Walt Disney, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I believe that more than ever, we should be committed, we should get purpose in what we do, and we should stretch our awareness, our knowledge, and of course go run this way from dreams to a reality which is called action. So action, my friends, action. And actually, I see this energy statement behind me. This is the first step in taking action. So we have a lady called Chevalier in ON5. Actually, ON5, I didn't explain you that, but ON5 stands for we work on the fifth energy, because at a certain point it was so difficult for people to understand what energy efficiency or energy saving was that I start thinking on another way to explain that. So the fifth energy, that's the perfect one. It costs nothing, it's the cheapest one, and it's with zero emission, and it's just the one you are not using, not consuming. So this is the fifth energy, the energy we are saving, the energy we are not consuming. And plenty of things to get into on this energy. So ON5 means we work on the fifth energy, which is for me part of the energy mix, because our houses in Europe are over-consuming by 6 to 9 times more than what we would consume if we were building today respecting new regulations. So by now, all of you are ready to take action to reduce energy consumption, and this is what ON5 is about. And this small workshop are for all company, and they start just explaining, raising awareness, where we should, as end users, start the journey to save energy. So my word will be action, right now.
Let me open it up to questions. If you could keep it to questions rather than speeches, and if you could just introduce yourself. I'm sure that Myriam knows most people in the room, but for the other people in the room, you're going to say who you are. First question here.
Okay, Martin Chisky, Passive Systems. I just want to build on the point you've raised, really, in that one of the biggest challenges we have over here is the decarbonisation of heat at the domestic level. The UK government's had several attempts at engaging consumers in that and largely failed. It seems to me in France you've been much more successful. Can you explain some of the things that have worked in France? In other words, people are at the forefront of the change. How do you engage with consumers at the domestic level in France?
That's a very good question, actually. In the energy business in general, including the regulation, we have a culture of top-down. And normally, most of the big energy companies, maybe some are here today, or politicians, thinks that we are not expert. I'm not going to say idiots, but we are not expert. And it's true that it's difficult to understand energy when you are not an expert. I tell you, I spent 20 years that I was going to conferences and spent hours and hours listening to people, really boring stuff. With 1 year, they can explain you about the technical thing of the pipe, whatever. So we continue in the same way. And actually, I talked with plenty of people explaining me that energy efficiency was about smart stuff, smart meters, smart grid, and at the end, and I believe that digitalization helped a lot. It's just how to get it upside down. And we should talk about people. We are the one paying the invoices, so we are the one empowered to change. And basically, the success of economy d'energie in France is based on a bet we took with a hypermarket called Auchan, and we said, well, now legislation obliges you to help your customer to save energy. So those poor Auchan was freaked out because they said, well, basically my job is to sell you. So what can I do with energy efficiency? Nobody's going to recognize me. I said, well, I have an idea. And we launched a website to directly address the end user, explaining them in very simple terms. Because nobody is idiot. The only thing is that we have to explain that very clearly what they could do. And actually, the ON5 customer journey is you start being an end user, a normal user, paying invoices, full stop, through a complete journey where we are going to answer any single question coming from you. And what is it about? How can I decrease my energy bill so we can renegotiate energy contract? How can I change my behaviors? And we have programs in big corporate like SNCF, for example, that are available for their employees, B2E programs, and we have one here in the UK. So the people start realizing how they can change the behavior in their house, in their transportation, or in the office. Then, of course, even if you understand that and you shift from bath to shower, and if you sing songs, you sing shorter songs. If you have a lousy house, you need to do renovation work. So you have question: what kind of work should I start with? Whom I have to talk to do the works? How can I finance that? I saw bank in the room, so how can I finance specifically this energy renovation work? What kind of device is going to guarantee me that I'm going to do energy efficiency? So. And we can continue, how can I optimize my energy consumption, and eventually can I produce for my own consumption? So our services through platform, we have 19 platforms today. I forgot to explain you that in France we were 10. Today we are 200 people. Half women and half men, so parity is already at work. So what we do is basically our services, digital services, are answering any single question, not asked by the government, but directly addressing the end user.
Can I have another question from, yes, over there.
Hi, my name is Yehuda Lethbridge. I'm an energy researcher in government for BASE. Just a continuation on the decarbonisation of heat. Energy efficiency obviously is a really important aspect of decarbonising heat. Only, as you said, perhaps 30% potential in the renovation market, when they're already consuming 6 to 9 times more than the new build houses, or at least to the regulatory standards of new builds today. So I guess there's always going to be, even if you were to retrofit energy efficiency onto homes, there's always going to be a massive residual demand for energy anyway for heat. So disruptive technologies are going to have to be deployed in order to decarbonise heat and meet our Paris commitments of 80% reduction. So from my point of view, I guess I'm asking, when we're considering the various options for decarbonising heat, hydrogen, heat pumps, heat networks, etc., how would you say that our research should be influenced at this stage of, we're going to have to put really disruptive technologies out there? How do we make sure that the public are as amenable as possible to taking them up?
Well, it's true that for those of you who are interested in energy transition, we are touching here a full set of issues we are obliged to address at the same time. So I consider that energy efficiency is the main pillar of energy transition, but of course you are right, energy transition is about decreasing or leaving the old fossil energy, which is an exercise by itself, because it means many different things, starting by idle assets we need to finance and things like that. And then, of course, it's about increasing renewable. Today, there are scenarios proving that we could rely 100% on renewable energies. And, of course, beside renewable energy, we are more or less aware, all of us, that there are some defects in renewable. We don't have the perfect energy except the one we are saving. So it means that with renewable, for example, if you take PV, those solar or wind electricity, there is something called intermittency. So it means that we have to solve problem of storages with bats or with hydrogen. So technology related with renewable is part of the new challenges, and we are improving very fast. And yesterday I was doing an article on that. It will, on the top of energy efficiency, also has to see, we probably get part of the CO2. I saw that some researcher in the UK looked at artificial trees proven, tested in Arizona in the States. So taking out the CO2 of the atmosphere. And everything is worse. What I don't like at all, and what is part of the new economy, is that nobody is right or nobody is wrong. So we have to work together and at the same time to take massive action on all the things we know and we have at our disposal. But what I am sure is that there is no 100% renewable scenario or 100% based renewable scenario without smart customers. So to have smart customer, to empower customer, we need to we have to count on any single citizen, who is by the way also an energy consumer. Why? Because I could develop that, but I will just give an example. For many years, for example, in France with nuclear, we explain to people that they have to do the washing machine in the night because in the night we don't have so much demand of electricity. Today, eventually we're going to say, those guys, do your washing machine between 10 and 12 because it's when we have sun. So what we cannot think is that we are going to have the genial device or smart meter, whatever, that is going to think instead of us, and to have us, it will help. But we need to engage any single customer. And to engage customers is far easier to start with energy efficiency. So this is what I am convinced and what my own investigation led me, especially when considering B2C. And too often we have the mistake of transposing B2B solution to B2C, which doesn't work the same way.
Yes.
Just a quick one on employee engagement. I totally see how your proposition has to be very well received by your customers in terms of embedding employee engagement within their organizations. You also are a teacher at HEC. How do you see that amongst the importance, I would say, the breakdown of courses at HEC, otherwise on climate change and sustainability, and how young generations see that in terms of the choice of the employers, for instance?
You are building on the question where people were not paying so much attention to sustainability. So for years I said sustainability is part of the equation, okay? And today I am much more assertive, I would say. If we are not talking sustainability and rethinking our businesses without taking account of the sustainability means people, planet, profit, my friends, there is no any longer sustainable business. So that's a choice. Destiny is the science of choices and consequences. So we have a business, it will last a couple of years, but limited lifetime. And actually you said perfectly that today, those companies creating more value and the one with more perspective are the one in that. And actually what is difficult are the one that understood that. And actually today the difficulty is that we have a frontal fight between those people that made a lot of money out of old businesses and the one creating a new world. And actually today what we see more and more is legal action against guys like that. For those interested in finance, you have to know that in the United States last year, I take just by coincidence the States, because everybody, maybe everybody is not aware that Mr. Trump decided not to be for the time being in the Paris Agreement. The cost of...
Can I just ask you, did that surprise you?
Well, it's part of what I said before. I mean, in the old economy, some people want to make the most out of it, and this, for humankind, those guys at a certain point will have to deal with legal action or with their own conscience. That's what I can say. So I'm not judging, but I think that we all make decisions, and decisions are shaping the world. So what in the United States, back to instead of emotion, I go to money. Last year in the States, the cost of damages related with with climate change manifestation. They have a lot. They really paid a high tribute. Was 350 billion dollars. 3 or 4 years ago, the court in charge of accountants in the States did a report to the Congress telling that it was important to do something about climate change, because they calculated at that time, 3 or 4 years ago, that it will cost 35 million per year to fight against the damages. In 1 year, they spent what costed 10 years. And the funny thing of that is that last year, remember, maybe Harvey just hit the center of the oil business in Texas. And now you have the oil business company telling, to the government, you should do something to protect us against climate change, so it's a very funny thing. And I will also tell you, and I think you explained that, but it's important for everybody to have this notion in mind, that 3 years ago, BlackRock, which is one of the main shareholders of Shell, of Exxon, said you should put in your report something regarding your action plan related with climate change, and they didn't do anything. At the end, they had a General Assembly where they were obliged to put something about that. And today there are plenty of climate, of justice, climate action, and it's become, honestly, it's become part of the equation in money, in dollars, in euro, not just. So this is the price of externality that start becoming more and more effective material.
I have time for one more question if there's anybody. Does anybody have a final? Yes, please.
My name is Will. I work for ON5. You said that you didn't think that it really comes down to right versus left anymore, politically.
That's my dream.
Okay. So what is the role of regulation?
This is very important. I think that there is an important issue, and Martin was really in the articulation between government and corporates. And if we do our work, corporates are supposed to do business, are supposed to build innovation, to build new business model, to address directly the end user and not citizen. So I believe that more and more in this issue, and to speed up the change, this articulation between regulation and the best we can do out of it will be part of the success in this climate change challenge.
Good. I'd like to just do two things. One is, I know that you're going to be staying for a few minutes, so we're going to be networking, so I'm sure you're happy to answer more questions when we're networking. I'd just like to say something on behalf of the Chamber. I'd like to thank ON5 for everything for this morning. I'd like to thank you because I found this absolutely fascinating. And I've learned a lot. And I can say in absolute honesty that although I think about this, and I do because I'm not an idiot, but at the same time I'm not an expert, this morning and our conversation when we were planning this made me think about it differently. And so for that, I just want to say a personal thank you. I'm sure everybody here would like to thank you and show your appreciation. I have one thing to add after that, but I think for the time being, I just want to say, Myriam, that was fascinating. You alluded, before we break for more networking, you alluded to something, but I'd just like to ask Anne-France Kennedy to say a few words, because I think ON5 have made a very interesting offer that not everybody may have picked up on. So, Anne-France, do you just want to say, would you stand up so everybody can hear you?
So Myriam created ON5 Group. L'économie d'énergie is a French company, and ON5 in the UK. So ON5 is the international name of l'économie d'énergie. So in the UK we set up, did everybody hear what I said before? So 2.5 years ago, I met Myriam and I got fascinated by the mission. And having lived here 20 years, I decided to set up with Myriam the UK arm of Economy Energy. And we've been deploying a program for employees and consumers to save energy. It's not easy, I can tell you, because nobody really wants to do it, but in the sense of it's quite a challenge. So what we've decided is to show how digital and physical engagement can help. So that's what Energy 100 is all about. We have our colleague Chevalier, she goes into your company and she gives free workshop for half an hour to help you, the employees of the company, for half an hour in a fun, interactive way to help to understand how you can save energy easily at home. And then we have a digital website called Energy 100 where we make it fun and easy for you to save energy, where you win points, competition, and it's just to raise awareness about how important it is to act, not just to talk about it. So there are free workshops, half an hour in your office, and you can sign up for this free workshop with our team. And Sharon is here.
Could everybody in the team stand up so everybody knows who to approach?
Yes, so it's 2 minutes to sign up for a workshop, and then you can help your employee to save energy at home. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will take advantage to thank this wonderful team here in UK. It's very small, so I hope that team grow because I like growth in companies. So thanks for what you do here, and thanks to all of you to support them.
So networking continues for another 25 minutes. Myriam is staying, her team is here. Again, thank you to the team at the Chamber as always, and to ON5 for sponsoring this fascinating morning, and to you again, Myriam. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.